everyone, my name is Tanya and welcome back to my channel about fiber arts. In this video I'm going to show you how I sew a hand-smoked skirt for my daughter. For construction of this skirt I'm using only my regular home sewing machine. I don't use any serger, and I think that this simple project is the perfect one to try all these cool heirloom techniques like hand-smocking and French seams. To pleat the skirt I used a smocking pleater. I'm the lucky to have one, so if you have one, it's perfect. If you don't have a smocking pleater, it's not a big deal. You can pleat by hand, and there are a couple of options I can suggest you to do that. First option is to trace the dots that will guide your needle to do the pleats, and I'm going to leave a link below to the website, to Sarah's website from, I think, Sarah's Classic Sewing. So she's selling a template of smocking dots. I think it's like $1 or $2 at most. And I used that one before I've got a smocking pleater. The only problem with that is your fabric has to be lightweight, and probably you won't be able to trace comfortably something with this much pattern. But if you use a solid color fabric or light color fabric, you will be able to trace it without any problems. The second option, which is especially great for skirts, I believe, is to use a squared or checkered pattern fabric. The squares will guide your pleating. My calculations for the skirt will be based on the lightweight cotton lawn that I used for this skirt. For this lightweight fabric, the minimum smocking ratio should be 3:1. If you are using something much heavier like corduroy or velveteen, I would suggest you to try 2.5 or even 2:1 smocking ratio and do the calculations accordingly. If you ever wanted to try hand smocking, I would suggest you the project like this because it is extremely easy in construction, and yet it is very unique because of this smocking. This is all I wanted to say in the introduction, so let's get started.
The final length of my skirt will be 17 inches. My daughter's half waist is about 11 inches. My fabric is lightweight, and for this fabric the minimum pleating ratio is 3:1, so I need to take at least 33 inches width, but I will take the width of the fabric, which is about 40 inches. Then I'll add about 1 inch for the seam allowance at the top of the front piece of my skirt, and 4 inches for hem allowance. For the back piece the height is 17 inches plus 4 inches for hem allowance, and I need to add about 2-3 inches to the top of the back piece to create a casing for the elastic. This value depends on the width of the elastic. Mine is about 1 inch wide. So I go ahead and cut 2 rectangles for my skirt. One is 24 by 40 and one is 22 by 40 inches. I roll the front piece on my dowel to run it through the smocking pleater. If you don't have a smocking pleater, you can pleat by hand using the dots that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Or you could use the fabric with checkered or squared pattern to guide your pleating. I remove the pleating threads from the seam allowance. By the way, normally I would remove the factory edges from the fabric to avoid breaking the needles of my pleater. But in this case they are exactly the same weight as the fabric, so I decided to keep to avoid extra fraying. I tie the pleating threads on one side of the piece in the groups of 2s and pin this edge to my heirloom shapen press. Then I start pulling the pleating threads on the other side of the fabric and gather it to its final width. I even out the pleats and pin them to my stitcher's press. Finally I block them using steam of my iron. And the smocking begins. I personally believe the geometric pattern is the best for the project like this. And the design really pops when stitched in the darkest color of the fabric pattern. I smoke using 3 strands of DMC cotton flask. I also find it easier to control the tension of my stitches when the pleats are carefully pinned on my stitches shaping press. To secure the ends, I insert the needle between the pleats and bring the thread to the wrong side. Then I tie it together with the threads from the neighboring rows. When smocking is completed, I steam it with my iron. I cut 2 bias strips, each 1.5 inches wide, and stitch them together along the grain. Next, I press the seam allowances open. Then I fold the strip in half with the wrong sides together and insert a cord to create piping. I use my zipper foot to stitch it in place. For the cord, I'm using a leftover cotton yarn that seems to be the right thickness. Then I pin the piping to the top of my skirt so that the piping touches the first smoked row. Next, I sew along the initial stitching that secured the cord. To finish the waist edge neatly, I cut a facing for the top of the skirt. The width of the facing is the width of the finished front piece plus allowances. The length of the facing should be the same as the length of the smoked panel plus the seam allowance that will be folded in. I pin the facing in place and stitch from the pleated side, carefully inserting the needle exactly along the line where the piping is stitched. Next, I sew another seam about 1/8 of an inch to the right of the first, then trim the excess seam allowance. And give the top edge a good press with the iron. For the French seams, I pin the front and back skirt pieces with the wrong sides together, aligning the top edge of the back with the edge of the facing. I stitch the front and back pieces together about 1/16 to 1/8 inch from the smoked panel, using a tiny zigzag. My zigzag settings are 1.2 mm for length and 1.5 mm for width. I press the seam and cut extra seam allowance very close to my zigzag. Next, I press the seam to one side. Then I fold the pieces right sides together. I press the zigzag seam and sew a second seam about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I fold the facing twice to the inside so that the folded edge rests against the last row of smocking. I fold the top of the back piece accordingly, continuing the fold from the facing. Then I pin the folded edge at the side seams. Then I top stitch the folded edge of the back piece to the skirt about 1–2 mm from the edge, creating a casing for the elastic. I tie the threads by hand at the side seams of the skirt and tuck the tails inside the casing. Then I top stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. This will form a gentle ruffle after adding the elastic. A safety pin helps me guide the elastic through the casing openings at the side seams. Then I stretch the elastic to its final width and secure it by stitching it into the side seams. After secured, I can cut the extra elastic. I decided to make the skirt shorter than I planned originally, so I'm going to make a growth tack. First I fold 4 inches to the wrong side, press and stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Then I fold one more time and press. And now I will stitch about 1 inch from the folded edge. I press the fold towards the bottom of the skirt. Finally, I attach the facing to the skirt using invisible hand stitches. I work from left to right, catching about 1/8 of an inch of the facing and 2 pleats from the skirt with each stitch. This way, all the raw edges are neatly hidden inside, and the facing stays securely in place when the skirt is worn.